Against Aston Villa, we saw something brand new from Manchester United. Lisandro Martinez was playing in midfield. He completed 97% of his passes and played more than twice the amount of progressive passes than Manuel Ugarte. All after Ruben Amorim said he couldn't even play the position. So what did we learn from this? So before talking about the Butcher's performance, we first need to apply some context, in particular, some tactical context. Aston Villa were not a side in this game in the second half which pressed particularly high. Especially once they were 2-1 up, they didn't feel the need to push high and push for goals. They were quite happy in their block. That meant that Manchester United had time. Villa in their block were often in a sort of 4-4-2 shape like this, lots of numbers behind the ball. For Manchester United, the way that we approached this was once again with a back three in possession of Yoro, Heaven and Luke Shaw. In front of them though, things start to get interesting. Lisandro Martinez went into a solo pivot role, whilst Ugarte pushed further forward into this sort of 8 kind of turned 10 role. Now, of course, this isn't perfect for United. Normally, we want Bruno Fernandes in there, but the impossible happened. Bruno Fernandes got injured, and Ruben Amorim had to react. He put Lisandro Martinez into midfield, and I think he produced a genuinely top-level performance. Now, the great thing about Lisandro Martinez has always been his ability to progress the ball when he is facing play. And that's always a concern when you put a player into midfield. Are they going to get that situation? You see, when you play at centre-back over here with Aiden Heaven, all the Aston Villa players are in front of him, which means for Heaven there's no one pressing from behind. He can see everyone, he can see everything, and therefore he can pick his passes, he can take his time, he can pick his moments. And Lisandro Martinez, when he plays anywhere in defence, is amazing at doing that. But in midfield, things are different. When you go and play in midfield, you have to sometimes receive the ball under pressure. You have to receive with your back to opponents, and you can be pressed from more different angles. Although actually in this game we didn't really see that, and that's why it worked so well for Lisandro Martinez, because he was rarely under pressure. Despite playing in midfield, he was still playing with things in front of him, for 2 reasons. One of those reasons was because he could drop into this position, this side of the Villa players, and he can get his head up and he can pick his pass, but also because he could go into that zone and the Villa players just weren't very aggressive in pressing him. So he had all the time in the world, which meant Licha could be progressive. And his progressive passing is absolutely fantastic. It's the fizz, it's the weight of pass, which I think is always brilliant from this fella. He is so good at firing a ball through the lines, but it's a nice ball to control. We see some players try and progress the ball, and it's like they're playing hot potato. Not the case for Lisandro Martinez. He is being very intentional with the passes that he's picking out. He's picking his moment to play through the lines, and then when he does, he progresses very well. And this is something that United have really lacked in recent weeks. We've really lacked that player who can sort of manipulate and break a team down, but Lisandro Martinez was doing it absolutely brilliantly from this deep position. And what this allowed for United was moments of centralised progression, something else that we sometimes struggle with. Lisandro Martinez wasn't interested in playing the ball long out wide to a flying wing-back, and then over here to a flying wing-back, and then over here to a flying wing-back. He wanted to keep the ball shorter, his passing range was much shorter, and he was trying to keep it tight. He was trying to knit passes together, and that allowed United to access these central zones with the likes of Cunha and Mason Mount. So Lisandro Martinez going into midfield sort of brought a new profile to proceedings. Not someone who wanted to go so direct, but someone who still has a fantastic passing range. Now that is absolutely fantastic, but it's not necessarily something new for the United midfield. Both Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro also have an excellent passing range, although they are a bit more direct with theirs, and I think that is the key. Lisandro Martinez was playing a shorter passing game, but also he was picking his moments to move forward. We said right at the start of the video, he completed 97% of his passes while still playing in a progressive manner, and that's because he was a player who was willing to take his time, and that is something that has really been lacking in the United midfield for a long time, especially with Kobbie Mainoo not being selected. United get caught up in these moments where the team is so emotional and plays into the momentum of the game. So if the game opens up, we see the likes of Bruno Fernandes firing passes forward at every opportunity, and it makes Manchester United incredibly dangerous. It allows us to move the ball forward, but it also puts the ball at risk a lot, and we lose possession a lot, and then defensively are quite vulnerable. With Lisandro Martinez, what we saw was, yes, someone who can move the ball forward, as we've seen already, but also someone that was willing to slow down. He was willing to take his time. He wasn't stressed by having more touches of the ball. If anything, he thrived. He wanted to play in this environment. And that sometimes meant playing sideways. That meant slowing play right down and taking multiple touches. But sometimes that's what you need to kill tempo. Now, I'm not saying that Lisandro Martinez should long-term play midfield for United, but in a game state where United are expected to dominate, to play through a team and try and create, having someone like Lisandro Martinez is perfect. It's not all about about creating chances, it's about managing tempo. This is one of the first times this season I've seen United feel in control. Now yes, ultimately we lost, so we can't get too carried away. But with Lisandro Martinez on the pitch, picking his passes, picking his moments to move the ball forward, and then picking his moments to play sideways, it really managed a tempo for United. We didn't see a side giving the ball away for the sake of it or playing too risky. He kept us ticking over, and I don't really recall the last time a player did that with passing range for United. Now, the other great thing with Lisandro Martinez coming into midfield is you get a left footer, which is very rare in a Manchester United shirt. Bruno Fernandes, right-footed. Casemiro, right-footed. Ugarte, right-footed. And Kobbie Mainoo, right-footed. Mason Mount, when he drops in, right-footed. Cunha, when he drops in, right-footed. They all play in a very similar way. And, of course, professional footballers should be two-footed. They should be able to play both ways. They should be able to dribble with both feet and pass with both feet. But I think when you see a left-footed player compared to a right-footed player, the big difference is instinct. I think people will always sort of habitually go towards their stronger foot, and that's the case with Lisandro Martinez also. But because he's left-footed, it gives us something very different. For example, when we are playing passes into midfield, and he is occasionally with his back to goal, this sort of pass popped out wide is much easier with the left foot than what it is the right foot. It's simply an easier pass to play because you sweep it as the ball comes across. So that's something which would help Manchester United if Lisandro Martinez was to play here more regularly. The other thing he did was he gave United a way of progressing into that left half space. You see, immediately when you got that left footer, teams are aware of that wide pass, and Lisandro Martinez is a player who plays with a great disguise. So he sort of manipulates the opposition. He's always playing a bit of a mind game. He's always teasing one way before passing in a different direction. And he sort of always leaves his body open to play that pass. But he's got the ability to snap the ball back in. So he almost shapes as though he's going that way, which can draw the opposition out. But then he just snaps that ball at the last second into the central position. And again, a right footer simply cannot play in that way. The right footer cannot play with that disguise. To do that, they're going to have to use the outside of their right boot. And we know that when players do that, we don't tend to see as much zip on the pass, which kills the tempo. So Lisandro Martinez being left-footed changed the way that we access the left side. And you can see in terms of United's attacking position, we use the left way more than what we have in the past. Now again, this actually goes on one step further. So Lisandro Martinez can pass to a left, that's great. Teams know that he can do that, so they gamble left, and that allows him to access the centre. Great. Now, teams know that he can access the centre, so they also start to sort of adapt and prepare for that. But that's when Lisandro Martinez can then actually play to the right-hand side. It's just a slightly different type of pass, but it's a pass that allows the receiver to have more time. You see, as Lisandro Martinez shapes as though he's going to play that ball, the opposition just sit off a little bit because they're just worried about that ball being fired between the lines. Then what we can see is a player on the right dropping a little bit deeper, and Lisandro Martinez is such a good technician. He manipulates the ball so incredibly well that he can find that pass as well with his left foot. And because it's left-footed, it sort of arches towards defenders initially and then away from them. Now, for Mount, that means it's an easier ball to control, but also it's a position where he can take the ball with more time and space. If the ball was moved too far forward, it might sort of put him into a pressurised situation. But because it allows him to drift away deeper, but also potentially a little bit wider as well, it means that he can receive that ball on his right foot, which, you know, so many players of ours are right-footed, and he can receive the ball with that bit more time. And that's why, all round, just on the ball, I think Lisandro Martinez was genuinely very, very impressive. Now, of course, we shouldn't get carried away. Ultimately, this was just 45 minutes. It's the first time we've ever seen it in a United shirt, and it was a sort of easy game to do it in because of the way that Villa played. Villa weren't insanely transitional, and they also didn't press particularly high, so literally didn't have much ground to cover defensively, and on the ball, he was able to play without pressure. You don't get that very often in the Premier League, however, he did play very well. Is this something that United could use a bit more in the long term? I would still be a little bit hesitant. A team pressing super high up the pitch, putting pressure constantly on Licha would be a little bit concerning, although his technical quality is very impressive, so he might be able to adapt. But I think the bigger concern for me would be those more open games, those more intense games. Newcastle, for example, in the next one, against Tonali, against Guimaraes, those players. That could be a very difficult challenge for Lisandro Martinez if he was to play midfield in that game. But there is an upside to all of this. You see, we have other midfielders that aren't great at covering ground defensively. For example, Casemiro. He's another one who can't deal with intensity, a bit like Lisandro Martinez. But Lisandro Martinez on the ball brings more of an upside in possession because he manages the tempo better, he looks after the ball better, and can play progressively without playing long or too risky, which is a really nice blend. It's retention plus progressive play. Lisandro Martinez, in that sense, is sort of perfect. So basically, I think it really all depends on the opposition and the players that United have got available. I think Lisandro Martinez can occasionally do a job in midfield. I think as a last resort, he's a nice option for that position. I don't think he's necessarily a player that should play there every week. I think Newcastle, will probably see Casemiro and Ugarte, for example, playing in the centre. So I don't think this is something that we're going to see loads of from Lisandro Martinez. But what it does do is point to a type of profile that we might need to go and sign, because Lisandro Martinez playing in that way in the second half really sort of opened our eyes to what a true passing midfielder looks like. Someone who dictates a game with safe but also progressive passing suddenly made United look like a very different outfit, which was really interesting in terms of, like I said, casting an eye to the future and looking at what United might need to go and sign in the transfer window. So yeah, basically, Lisandro Martinez played very well, really well. I think the conditions and the situation suited him. There will be bigger tests in the future if he is to play this position more regularly. But you can only beat what's in front of you. You can only perform against what's in front of you. And I think Lisandro Martinez played very, very well in that second half. And yeah, gave us a glimpse of what could come in the future. But that is the future. It's a case of a waiting game now. Wait and see what United do. Will Lisandro Martinez play there again? Will we sign a different midfielder? Will other people come back fit sooner than we expect? We just don't know. We've got to wait and see. So for today, we're going to do that. We're going to wait and see. We're going to stop the video there. Thank you guys very much for watching this one. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like, subscribe, and get your notifications on. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.